This is Karen Davalos with Magu Lujan, and today is October 8th, 2007. He was telling me about his impressions of traditional arts. I lost the train of thought.
Well, what I was really getting to was that I'm going to be making artwork in the future. This is where I was going with it. And I'm going to be making holographic lowriders.
That sounds great.
And those will actually be sculptures you can buy. In other words, you can take it home. I have a friend of mine, Dennis Tibbetts, who I was talking to on the phone, and I told him, I said, I don't want to just keep doing these little initial levels of Chicano art that I've done for all these years. I've made my point. Now I want to go into technology and begin to do stuff like a holographic lowrider of the ones I make. Mm-hmm. Not just a car. It's got to be my work, so that it retains that Maguism stuff. So I'm going to be doing things in the future that are not what I've done in the past, because as a sculptor, I want to challenge myself into making figures, and like all the stick figures that I've done, they're ultimately really like geometry. They can be very elegant in their simplicity. And for me, it spells that you can go into your backyard and get some twigs, and you can make some pretty sophisticated artwork with a little paint and a little, shoe shine.
Well, if you're going to do work with I don't even know, how do you do that holographic? I mean, is it...
Well, Dennis is going to do that. See, okay. I'm not interested in learning how to do it. I want to know what's capable of.
So you have to have a crew for the technology.
Well, I'm going to have this one guy, I'll get the image, and then how we transpose all that is beyond my knowledge right now. But I will find out, and I'll get good at it enough to be able to do it myself. But I'm not really interested in becoming a technician. It's like a printer. For me, right. I need the printer to help me make a better work of art. So I'm in his hands. I said, look, this is what I'd like to do. How do I get there? So technicians to me are important. And they have a value because they help my work and they make it better.
Well, you've talked about your bringing in your family members as technicians, I guess, to help with the car.
Oh, that's been a tradition already. Yeah. As a matter of fact, car building, we're getting this stuff done over here with this upholsterer. This man, that's what he does. So we're making burrito front seats. Now he didn't really know how to. He said he didn't even know how to approach that, because what he does is everything is nice and pulled and tight and secured, which is gorgeous work. I mean, he does really good stuff, but he doesn't know how to make a burrito. I said I'm gonna bring a hot plate. I said, we're going to have burritos here first. So.
Well, let's go eat.
I don't know what to tell you, except these are old prints from a lot of different people, and they've kept them in fairly good condition. I mean, you can see. There's Jerry Brown when he was running for and signed. I was always a supporter of him.
Were you collecting these, or?
Yeah, look, they're right here.
I mean, but what was your intention at the time? Why were you?
To save them. To save them. And RCAF, a lot of, Cesar Chavez. This is a photo of a mural that we did that was 60 by 40 feet. Look at how small we are.
Whoa.
We did that in a month.
That was the UFW convention.
Una sola unión. And they took that mural and they put it behind their warehouse and let it rot.
Whoa.
So much for social movements and.
Did you do the decorative one in the front too?
No, that's shit. This is all I could do. This is huge. It's got I don't know how many. It's got a couple hundred images of figures. We have a guy here with a guitar with chrome that's been painted like chrome-like. I mean, this is incredible. We had Spider-Man in there. We had trucks. The articulation of this thing was remarkable. And I'm sorry we didn't get more details. At that time, I was so exhausted from doing this, and I had to just start my semester. As a matter of fact, I missed the first day of class because I was doing this, opening the convention with Cesar Chavez And I just, and emotionally, I said that we had dedicated all this work to the farm worker.
Yeah.
And those are kind of empty things after a while, because you say it here in this crowd, and there's so many people that are out doing your speeches that it became meaningless after a while. But anyway, that's what they
It's
did.
a great document.
Yeah, well, they proved to be less interested in our
This
efforts.
abstract one with the telephone and the UFW.
Oh yeah, isn't that something? Well, that's an unfinished one. But anyway, I don't know who did that. But we have this one here is kind of a more of a mystical. This kind of aesthetic here is more about brujos and men of knowledge and
What's the name of this
seers.
piece?
I'm not really sure. Let me see.
You put it on the back? So it's been exhibited.
Hombre de Mystery. It was done in 2000. It's 24 by 18. And it's that's the actual paper size, and it's a Prismacolor pencil pastel, I guess you would call it. And these here are the same thing. These large drawings.
Oh,
See that?
those are fantastic.
And I got
These
a bunch
portraits?
of these. Yeah, I got a bunch of these.
Are these actual people or are these composites?
No, I just drew them. They're more doodles than anything.
On black paper?
On black paper.
Why'd you go to black paper?
Because this guy gave me a stack of it. As a matter of fact, the black paper. What is it? I mean, it's even heavy. I got like bunches of this paper. But let's go over here. These little long, very long. They're like maybe 3-4 inches wide, and at least 3 to 4 feet long. This one's probably just about 40 inches long or 36 inches long. But these long strips of paper that have these narratives of lowriders and figures, and mostly landscapes. Every one of these has a landscape. And these composite of a bunch of cars driving around and these little villages and architecture that I put, including these large sculptures. These are sculptures, they're not people. But these scenarios, like all these little houses and stuff, they're all done with this pseudo-Mesoamerican influence, or types, And they also are even more closely related to what I'm doing, is storyboards. But instead of doing them in little boxes and showing sequence, I do this whole kind of like, you could pan across this and get the whole image better. And if that isn't enough, here, look. There's tons of them. There's a bunch of them in here. Here's more.
A stack about 2 inches fat.
Yeah, just look at, this is the mural I did in Santa Monica.
Yes.
That's the drawing for it, which is much better than the actual mural. I can get grittier or something. This one is.
Wait a minute, back up. Why do you say that's much better? I mean, it's a different. You're
It's a
using a
different
different
one.
medium, so.
Yes, but
this has a kind of detail and.
It has a quality.
A quality that doesn't show up in the mural because I think of the. When you go to paint. I mean, you lose that kind of edginess that you can pick up with a pen, right?
Exactly. They are two different mediums, and for me to do this over there, I would have had to approach it differently.
Yeah, this comes out more realistic than cartoony that you see in the mural.
Yeah, and I did that I did that whole mural by myself. I didn't have a staff. I didn't have helpers, which would have helped because they could have helped me. For example, the sand. The sand is rather flat up there,
Yeah.
and this one here has more little texture. But that's one. And here's more of those narratives.
So these narratives, models or
Models.
sketches or I don't know, or
Oh,
these are just
these-
this
yeah.
is the size you're working in.
This is called a sketch, and it's a working sketch of what I was going to do. And I pretty much followed this. It's pretty much, I had this in hand. I had it in my hand. And then I had all these grids. So I'd count the grids and so forth. Then I would draw these people freehand on the mural. And there's more. Look, I guess there's stacks.
When did you start working in this, I don't know what to call it except these long,
These drawings?
narrow...
They're kind of like storyboard formats
Yeah.
in that they're very long and narrow. They're not that tall. But I started doing them some 20-something years ago because all these are really, and most of the work I've done is supposed to be really studies for animation. And so to answer your question directly, these are animation studies. And you can see that.
You making a movie?
Oh, I'd love to make a movie. I'm waiting for my benefactor. Or that rich woman I was looking for.
Now these aren't,
What?
these are much more
Well,
lyrical and
this one
even
here
impressionist.
this one that we're looking at is just two women looking at what seems to be a nebula of stars or a cloud or something that looks white on black paper. And it's just two women looking at this.
Well, the one
Let's
to
see
the
what
far
it's-
right is a part of her face.
Yeah, because
You have very nice capture of the eye, the nose.
her scale, to be explicit over this tape recorder, is the size of her head goes beyond the size of the paper, and that allows me to bring her really up front, close to the viewer. Then the second one, which is back further, shows the whole head. So she, in terms of perspective, is set back a little bit, even though they're both in the same kind of foreground.
Right. And
I
they
mean-
is that an indigenous nose?
What?
Your nose that you do. I mean, almost like Josefina Aguilar does a nose.
Similar?
And that's the nose she does. Every sculpture has the same nose. And I was wondering if your noses were intentionally...
I really changed them. If you look carefully at the stuff, look at this. Well, they may have the same. I think maybe you're right.
Not exactly the same, but they're not European noses, Magu.
No, they're not. No, I'm trying to do Chicano stuff. Here's just a caravan of cars with a guardian angel in front of the truck.
Now, this is a different technique you're using here.
Why?
It might be the same pencil, but it's
It's
got
all
a...
Prismacolor.
It's got a...
You mean the way it's drawn?
The blending of the coloration.
Yeah, it's a little more. Yeah, they vary.
More.
See, like this one here, it's very subtle, but I put a lot of white at the front of it, and then it gets darker here. It's dark way up here. And I don't know, that's supposed to be like light.
And coming out of her mouth.
That's speech.
Yeah.
All these little very fancy graphics are speech. But it also graphically makes the drawings look very Magu-ish, because people don't take that elaborate.
Well, it
extent
reminds me of that curling breath. Reminds me of the indigenous.
That's where I got it from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly where I borrowed it from the codices. Now here, this is obviously a row of little dogs that I'm going to use for my characters. This one here is a more, it's this kind of like a Kachina-like structure or person, you know. So I got a lot of those.
So this is something you've been doing for quite some time. Some of them are wrapped very nicely, protected in plastic and mounted.
And then I hide them. Then I just
have they been
bury 'em.
exhibited?
No, none of these. No, you may be the first person to see these, other than the guy that wrapped them.
Why'd you wrap them?
Well, to keep them neat, and they're ready for sale. And what's going to happen here in this room is now I have the product, and we're going to put them up or put them somewhere, and then people can just buy them like this. But I don't frame them because that's an incredible expense.
Right.
And most often, people will find their own way of framing these things.
Now this one's interesting. The woman's got a hairdo.
Headdress, yeah.
A headdress, yes. And the thing she's conversing with is very futuristic, but at
Well,
the
he's
same
one of
time-
the Kachina-like cartoon guys, and if you look at that dress thing on top of his head, which is a kind of an item that they wear to represent any number of things. His nose is like Pinocchio. He's thinking of the corn spirit. That's what this is about. And she's talking and talking, but also, this is called Speaking of the Corn Spirit with La Chola. And this was done in '02, for example. Now she's got things coming out of her heart, these little colored circles. So graphically, I'm trying to create new kinds of symbols to work with. And so that people can get used to speech being these really abstract images, little abstract forms that I replicate speech for. And here she's thinking about whatever that is. Looks like a bolillo.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of question marks. Oh, it might be I don't know. I do try to make some of these things vague to allow for various interpretations. Now, had you seen that borderless art car before? Well, that is part of the cultural series that I'm doing with cars. And that's Warrior Woman up on the mantle.
Let's look at the car.
We can go around this. We'll
Okay.
have it. Okay,
Go ahead.
I don't even
We're
notice that I'm doing it. I didn't even know that I had done anything but explain that what I've done here with this car is made out of plaster, and it's a Chevy Fleetline 51, 52, and it's got chili flames that are very painterly like.
Yes.
And in this case, instead of making those lines that have a subtext of being the flames, I just have the chilies floating there with little red motion marks, like if it's moving back, like flames. And then I've done another thing is I put flames on a lowrider. In this case, I have some of the flames painted white, and then I have kisses, hugs, chile, and I have different propaganda items that I put because I use the flames as a way to propagandize the viewer, like Borderless Arte Express. And over here I have Beyond Borders, like hot, proud, beyond borders. So these are all kind of like little poetry text that goes along with the flames. And the back of the trunk, where it would normally be the trunk, is this sarape. And again with these southwestern Pueblo, Taos, Apache, all that sector is where my father's from. And there's a lot of Lujans over there. And then here I changed the scale of the chiles. If you notice, they're much bigger towards the back. And then on the roof of the car, they're all hearts. So these metaphors are about Chile. It's a hot flame job. It's a hot car. The corazon is, of course, I relate it to the culture as being a hot item. We as a culture, I think, operate emotionally more than anything. So.
And on the front it says Califas Chevy Custom.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the name of the work, or is it?
I call it Borderless Express,
art.
but there's enough stuff on here where you can call it whatever you want. But I think we name it different things. On the back bumper, in a white bumper, I have in red cultural vehicles, which is another identifying item that I put on these so that people will understand these are cultural vehicles for me to express my culture, and lowriders in particular. See these calaveras here, these two big ones? Oh,
Yeah.
Where's the other one? There's a blue one. I don't know where it is. It's probably upstairs. But I did those in Irvine back in the early 70s. And these were images that I got in as a profile in the codices. So that big old nose there that looks like a Pinocchio nose, and even the shape of the calavera is very unusual. They don't usually make them like this. But I was trying to be an artist, and I don't want to replicate the calaveras. I want to create new ones. And so my job has been to try to reshape mythologies to fit us in our contemporary, lifestyles. All these dogs here, they're all bronzes. That's all bronze.
Wow.
So these right here, they're heavy too, but
They're like wearing a tuxedo. They're the hip dogs.
I've had that dog since the late 60s, and there's a fellow that everybody thinks is my work, and his name is Pearson.
Mm-hmm.
And he does these little mass-produced dogs that like my dogs. He did his in '86, so most people, the galleries that I was with, they said, well, you should sue this guy for copyright infringement. But I call it influence. And I don't know if this guy would acknowledge that he copied them from here, but they're very close. They're so close that it's... He has a book that he has out. I just read it. It was really neat. I like his work because he's done something else to it. And it's very often that artists go to the same place. But his images are coming out of nothing. Like he just started being an artist and this is what he was doing. Whereas I have a history and a development to get me to these dogs. And the pyramid dogs is how they started. But nonetheless, he did some interesting things, but he did mention how he got started, and he has his own little story. But up to the point of 86, he must have seen something that I've done. But there was some business people that came by and wanted me to do what he did. And that is to send my little dogs to Bora Bora or one of those islands, Samoa or Tonga, I don't know where. And they would have them done over there and then ship them back and painted and everything.
Mass produced.
And, oh yeah, because they were only paying like, I think 20, 25 bucks each and then selling them here in the States for $1,200. And this kid was, I guess, getting his chunk out of it. So I didn't do it, see, and they hit me up in the 70s. So they finally got somebody to do it as an artist and then took it from there. But who knows? These are just art stories that I hear, and you know, I have so much that I've invented for my own repertoire that I'm not worried about it.
So,
up on the wall there is a Toledo, Francisco Toledo, those kites. And those other two are Carlos Almaraz's.
the cardboard.
Well, I was working in cardboard, so he started doing cardboard. And if you look at his early work when I first met him, he was doing faces and stuff just like I did. See that picture, Ghost?
Yeah.
That's what he was looking at my work. So he went from the New York images to doing these Chicano things. And his early works where he did women that were Indian and Chicanas, those were taken from drawings that I had done. And then being a superior artist that he was, he took it on his own and he took it to as you know, his work is wonderful and admirable. So now I have to try to catch up with him, basically.
Hold on, let's find. Tell me about the cutouts.
These paper cutouts were done by folding a piece of paper in half and making sure that the folded part is substantial so that they don't fall apart. And then you cut out profiles, just like they do those silhouette shadow things. But basically, this is a simple project that I came up with to allow kids at a tabletop to make all these little people, which I cut out first, and I do it freeform. I just cut out the legs, the clothing, everything. Then I come back later and I draw it in. I draw in the arms and the faces and all that. Then I put them on as you can see, this little boxes and stuff that I put them on and those little pieces of cardboard are just a base so they can stand up. But the requirements for these cutouts, they have to stand up. So I use paper stock of at least 100 pounds, paper stock, which is like the manila folders that you use in school.
Yeah.
They're stiff enough at that range. These are about, 3 to 4 to 5, 6 inches tall, and they're small. But I did these originally because, like many of the things that I'm doing, I had seen some Otomi paper effigies that they burned in rituals, and so I wanted to, using them as a Indian source, an indigenous source of an art, something that I saw, then I translated them into cholos and rabbits and all these characters that you see there, that one figure sitting on a chair, for example. And then I use different colors, like one's in orange and the others are all colored in.
Is that ink pen?
Yeah, ballpoint pen. There's a series of faces in the back, which I've done forever, stemming from the idea that we were not on TV So I started doing these fictitious people just as doodles originally. So all of my faces that I do like that are really just makeshift. They're not models.
Is that what these over here, these large ones we were looking at originally? You called them doodling, and
Yeah, these are doodles.
what is that? That's almost like standard poster size. So it's like what?
This
40?
one is, these are at least, we can measure them, but they're big. They're like 46 by
Yeah,
maybe
46.
30,
30 some. Yeah.
28. We could measure them.
And
I got a lot of these too.
the lines are extremely, the way you render this flesh, it has a lot of motion and activity that catches both shadow and expression. I wonder if you could talk about that technique.
Okay, it's what I'm doing here basically is using a Prismacolor and then going over the surface of the face, for example, with different colors, and therefore modeling the shapes by using the different colors, and maybe emphasis by having dark pencils in where the shadows are. And since there's a lot of little shadows, it's kind of like a mosaic in a way if they were little pebbles, but these are lines, as you can see. And I leave the lines, in other words, the black paper underneath is still there. So there's a texture that is created by the black paper underneath, and then the modeling, the surface of the image in pencil is where the modeling takes place.
Well, she's got, is that her hair or a hat or a headscarf?
Well,
It's purple and red and orange, and
Yeah,
his
well.
is green. That's his hair. Can you tell me about your color choices?
Well, his is more blue, isn't it? But it's
Yeah.
a blue-green. I probably have two different pencils operating there. And I do it, the color scheme, if you're asking about the color scheme, I did that just to make them artsy. I mean, nobody has hair that color, but this is art. I'm not doing realism here. I am doing something that is really equivalent to creating images of people, Chicanos in particular, and then I attach a little bit of fantasy to it.
Yeah, I like the way you capture
His shirt.
the shirt is, we've got dog with
His shirt.
tortoise.
His shirt
and-
winds up being an area which is in the shape of a shirt. I mean, his body, his shoulders, and his up to his neck, and this is just a flat area where I can do all these graphics. There's a studio, a house, or an adobe structure with a beanie. I got a guy with a bow and arrow, and here's a dancer. I have moons, stars, and at the bottom of it, it says El Chicanindio, because I think that Chicanos are basically Indian people with different kinds of associations. Like some people, like I know guys that are married with Pimas, Dene or Navajos or Hopi, and so there's all this Mexican and Indian combination. But Raza, our own histories that go back, like in my father's side, it's probably more Apache and Chihuahua and Tamara. You see, so I think we're indigenous people by and large. And so that's my inclination to use all this Indian stuff. That is part of my heritage.
Tell me about his hair color is this blue green, and then the use of that same color on the side of his left side of his face.
Yeah, it acts as a way of unifying the image, because the blue around his chin is attached to the hair. Visually, you don't. I don't know how people register it, but they do register that the blue is connected. So everything on his face has a little bit of that blue here and there. And it's certainly, I use it to outline if you see it, it's on the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I also included that same pencil in the images that I put on the shirt. So these shirts actually have all these images, which I'm going to manufacture in time. And they'll actually have all these little images. So you'll be able to buy a Magu shirt with all these little images. So that's a merchandising idea that's an outgrowth out of doing these little drawings.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but the stroke over his nose and forehead that comes down into the nose, why does that remind me of the dog figures?
I don't know. Let me ask you, why do they remind you of...
I don't know. It's just that length, that long stroke, the coloration. It reminds me of some of the dog figures.
Oh, you mean the humans that go with the dogs?
Mm-hmm.
Well, really, you got a pencil, and you've got a large, since these are larger faces, which are larger than a life size, maybe twice as big as a normal head. So I need to do the pencil lines with longer emphasis, they
Mm-hmm.
just, they're longer strokes. But these little kind of lines, a whole bunch of series of line, which gives me my modeling, is also kind of an artsy-fartsy thing. So if you notice, I vary them. I cut them across,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't stay consistent, because if I were to do them consistently, it'd be too orderly and too contrived. There's a degree of spontaneity displayed just by helter-skelter lines.
Okay.
Pull
Now,
this forward so you can see the image. I know what it is. But this is Chino. El
and
Chino.
his shirt is saying Chino.
His shirt has El Chino written over and over again, and that's the text to the shirt. And again, shirt is a way for propaganda, like I use the flames. And the painting on this stuff is, again, you can see how I learned painting from Carlos, I would say, and also every other artist that I've seen paint. But I think Carlos was influential in my painting because he was really the master painter. Because I didn't study painting, I studied sculpture.
Well,
So-
definitely your brush stroke here has that same kind of blending quality that you were capturing in Prismacolor pencil.
Well, that's learning how to mix paints and learning how to paint, how to be able to get away with mixing the colors without them muddying up,
Muddy, yeah.
which is one thing. The other thing is that when you're adding paint, I might put a little bit of lighter color here and then let that kind of influence that kind of red here around the eyes. It's lighter.
Is this acrylic on
This is, yeah, acrylics.
paper or
And this was done in what?
87?
87. I'm glad we didn't sell that. This has a great frame and everything, and it's been up for sale. Nobody's ever been interested in it, but I think it's a strong piece.
Very beautiful piece.
Yeah, and so, well, you never know. Oh, here's some more of those that the black ones I was telling you about. Here's more. And they have the same, this might even have more of what you're talking about.
Yeah,
This one has his tongue sticking out.
very playful.
Yeah, and the shirt again has these varied. This one is called something about enjoying your life and enjoying your lifestyle. And it's got a pie, it's got cigars, money, lips,
Which is an animal figure too, right?
Oh,
is
it
it a
is,
dog or a
whatever.
bunny or? I mean, the dollar sign.
Oh, it looks like a dog with his
has-
mouth
has-
open.
Yeah, it looks
See
like
that?
a dog with mouth open, ears and eyes.
And here's this very sexy woman in a negligee or something light. So this one is a guy about enjoying life. Here's more.
Did you conceive of these as a series, or I think
Oh,
I've asked
yeah.
you this before?
Yeah.
Wow.
This was not done.
I get to see it without the plastic, though. Like,
Yeah,
really,
this is
your
much
technique
better.
comes through.
Vato con multicultural roots.
What was that,
And
Magu
so
86?
here's a guy, and I haven't finished this one, but you can see where this one unfinished. You see these lines are
Yeah.
the undercarriage, the underpinnings of the painting, and as I keep coming over it, putting more pencil lines,
Yeah.
then the shaping and the modeling takes place. But below his neck are these roots that are really his shirt. See, that's the design of his shirt. And then his
Again, all
hair.
of them have wonderful hair, the coloration you choose for the hair.
Yeah,
And his-
because it's more fun for me to be doing that, and he's got his hair parted in the middle, and it's like a rainbow. It's got blue and red, yellows, and it's like a spectrum.
So is the forehead here the more complete part where it's these more warm colors,
Yeah,
the red, the
orange,
orange,
reds.
yellow, and the cheek, the chin, the cheeks, the side of the face, that has greens. So you're going to come over with those warmer colors, or
That I couldn't tell you.
okay, they're still at play.
Yes, but I think you're right. I mean, you can see where I stopped using the reds above his eyebrow. Then below it is this greenish colors predominantly in light yellowish kind of creamy colors. Now, whether I leave it like that would depend on the mood when I sit in front of it and finish up this.
Yeah, because I think that the face is done. I think the face is, the coloration, the composition is exquisite. Even though it's more dramatic than the other images you're showing, you know,
Yeah.
he's got a red-orange forehead and his
Oh, yeah,
cheeks
bizarre.
are not, right? Even the side of the face has the blue for the shadow.
Like a light source or something.
Yes. So
But,
it has
you know,
a totally
these are-
different quality than the others lend themselves to a more naturalistic skin tone.
Yes, a straw blonde. Because there's Chicanas like my daughter, she's a straw blonde, naturally. You know, my mother had very fair skin, and she's up on the wall in the kitchen. And so we have that predicament of having people with different kind of DNA and kind of color of hair and so forth. It's always a butt of some kind of conversation, right? The butt end about the güeritos and the morenitos kids, and the idea of color and racism and all that. So, as you can see, her skin and the hair match. She should have this color of hair. Then I did the raccoon eyes to remind them of several things that indigenous women always painted themselves up, even the men. And we've become these really prissy middle-class people that think that if you paint your eyebrows too heavy, it's cheap and trashy. But those are cultural boundaries that people make up, you know, and keep. But I try to also, if you notice, I give them all a different expression.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if these noses look indigenous again to you or not, but if you look at them, I try to vary their nose. I try to...
Yeah, it is almost as if you have
A style,
a model had sat for you.
on these.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the Lovers. This is an older piece I did when I was much younger. This one is 85. Los Lovers Jóvenes. Now this is, I think, a pastel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was just, I don't know, I never had done these lovers, and there they are. Here's one of a guy, a face, again, very expressionistic, a lot of extra lines and just very spontaneous distribution of color and the lines. It's a lot of linear stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm using line to construct the architecture of the face. And then the colors are somewhat minimum compared to others. But
Well,
he's wearing
this is a
a
different
hat.
media too, right? You're using
This is pencil.
pencil and
Yeah, it could be maybe pastels or markers or something here. But these colors are coming from something that I don't know what it is. Let's see. They look like crayons. Yeah, they're pastels of some kind. Then his hat, his little baseball hat, has the monogram L.A. La. And I have smoke coming out of his head, so I don't know what that means. I have more if you want to keep looking.
Oh, tell me about this image, learning to read.
This is called Earning the Learning, and it's a silk screen that was done by this fellow, but he didn't do it. The silk screen colors were very muted, where I needed stronger colors. And I guess he was fudging on, he wanted to extend his inks, although we paid him a good price. I think he get paid handsomely. But then he chinched on the paints. So what I've done with these is I've come back and I reinserted the color with Prismacolor. It takes me a long time. And there's a lot of color missing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Where was this printed? What was the house?
in Los Angeles. And it was done with a nice guy. I mean, I really liked the guy, but he was always snowing. It was always snowing at his house. Let me see what else. Now that particular this particular image, for example, is meant to talk about California. That's why the missions.
The mission, the child reading.
Yeah, so it's pretty much a
But
project.
you got the dog with some cool glasses and the jaguar.
And again, it's very loaded up with all these little shapes and somewhat abstract individually, but combined it becomes this narrative with a lot of colors.
But also the humor. I mean, they're ducks.
Yeah,
You think you're going to be looking at some like Mesoamerican, iconography, and then it's a duck. It's got the duck bill, and the way it's open gives that kind of humorous.
When I was drawing this, you can see there's feathers behind this kid that is representing an indigenous. On the other hand, it becomes like a sunshine, or like the Virgen de Guadalupe. It has all these flames coming out of her, right? So that's a motif that I used here. I kind of simulated a Mexican hat without it being this halo he's got over his head. Then I put these little ferns and stuff just to give me another image besides these that I invent here, but just some decorativeness to it.
No, it's a female figure on the top.
She's in the middle, okay? But if you notice, I have male and female on both sides. Then I have female and male. So there's always the duality for me. Anyway, nobody can get on my cake. Oops. Now this is a print to my brother Magu, a toast to the careers we have shared to the. Anyway, it's a dedication here that. Oh yeah, I can't read it.
There's too much. It's something to the
Visitation, Modern Heroes. This is done by Ramirez. I don't know. Oh, Rudy Fernandez. That's what.
Oh yeah, that's Rudy Fernandez.
Yeah, I just can't read his writing either.
Yeah, because there's the heart. I shouldn't have even had to.
He
read
can't draw and he can't sign his name.
the heart with the profile of the cactus in white. Yeah,
This is so
signature
dumb.
image.
He puts this finger, this cactus in here, and he thinks it's cute, and it's just distracting as hell. It doesn't always fit his images. But he's one of the stubborn ones. He don't listen to me. You should hear us on the phone where I'm always ragging him.
Where'd you meet Rudy Fernandez?
He came to my house one day. Oh, you'll like this one, I think. Again, another one of those narratives. This is I was living in Santa Monica, and this little guy came up into my house, and he had these huge arms and small waist and everything. Well, he was on steroids. I didn't know it at the time. He was looking all buffed. And he had new Levi's. He was looking real cowboyish, really the kind of like the Colorado, Texas, New Mexico cowboy look at the time. Now this is 70s. So he was here in town, and he had asked this guy to introduce me. So he did, and that's where I met him. And then later he turned up in the Hispanic art show thing. But Rudy had this fella named Joe Terrell, who wonderful guy, was putting together a gallery, and so that's where he saw my work. And I had done these little stick figures, but the piece that he had was very elegant. It was a real simple dog figure with a cardboard background diorama, and it was called Red Hills something. And I think I still have it, or somebody bought it. I think somebody bought it. I don't remember anymore. This was a study for a museum project. I wanted to paint a room like this. Oh, now I
see it. It's 3 walls.
Yeah. So, and I graphically did it this way. I could have done it with better perspective. I'm cheating here with the perspective. Really, this is not the way it would look. In other words,
you flatten it out.
Well, I have a straight across the top.
Right.
Then I have the sides come towards you at an angle. So that perspective should come this way. See that? Mm-hmm. But I'm not interested in that. I wanted to show you this. And it's a sky. I always have sky, earth. And these 2 central figures, again, look at the nose.
Yeah.
She's even chata, kind of real weird. Mm-hmm. She's got a very high bridge. And he's got more of a nose like mine here, I think.
Yeah.
I would say. And that's unintended. And then they both wear beanies. And in this repertoire of images and motifs that I got from the culture, you have the burrito, the chicken, do you have any sandia? No. I love watermelon. Pants, all these things, hats.
You got the needle.
I do, where? Oh, that, yeah, well, there's some of those too. I think,
But your landscape on the left is like a desert combination, high desert
yeah,
with the mountain with snow, and on the right it's the
it's a neighborhood. This is, if you went to Magolandia, you would find these buildings, excuse me, and there are all these pyramid dog structures. When I first tried to I tried to put together an icon that represents what I was doing. The Mexican pyramid always made sense. One day when I was playing with that image, I inverted one of the pyramids, and it looked like a dog howling from the two pyramid shapes, one in opposite direction. So therefore, that was where all these dogs were born, whether they were elliptical or half of a sphere, or just square and pyramid shape.
where the door or
And
window
with
becomes
doors
the
and the
space
windows
between the legs.
Between the legs, and
Yeah.
then the mouth up at the top
Right.
is a passive solar system. It's like if you keep your windows closed, the sun will heat up like crazy, and then you have a source of heat. They all look like kachinas, like over here. These particular drawings here, because my particular arrangement, DNA arrangement, has the Southwest Indian blood, and then the Tarascan. My mother's on the side of Western Mexico, Guadalajara, and we have Dutch blood that's mixed up in our DNA there. But anyway, I'm borrowing from those two areas.
Let me turn it off while you look.
This one?
So let's talk about this
The motif.
painted face. Well, he's got like this
Oh, like
purple
oh.
stripe across his nose.
Okay, he's got a band of color between the ears, the top and the lower ears, that extends to the nose.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes below his eye and above his mouth, which is this band of purple, and it ends at the ear. Above it, capping that, is a turquoise blue, or something close to turquoise. Also, his eyes are painted, like in one of those little motifs that I use all the time. It's a round circle with these little extensions here, these three little extensions.
So where does that come from?
Oh, this is to indicate that, indigenous people and people all over the world used to paint their face. They would use their bodies as decoration. And we live in a very dull, monotonous world where you don't do any of that stuff, and then you wear a gray suit, and that's supposed to be cool. Most people around the world are very, very colorful. And so I think it's just part of the way we look at the world, and toning it down, like in China, to just one gray suit for everybody. There's something politically evil about that. It's kind of like stamping out all the possibilities that are there in the individual person, which is Western pressure, and then the need to standardize 1 billion people to this grade something. But now that's falling apart. My brother married a Chinese woman and became Chicanese, but that's where I get that little comment from my brother. But when he went over there, when they found out he was teaching salsa, they got like that. They got 300 people. Now you got to remember, their cities, they have like 40 million people to a city.
Yeah.
Like not 44 million like in LA or 20. California has what, 35 million people in the whole state? Well, they have towns like that. So 300 people is like, you call a couple of people and they, you got 300 in no time at all. And what he was doing was he was teaching them salsa dancing, boleros, rumba, salsa, all that stuff, because that's what he does. He teaches that. He's interesting, my brother Bobby. And so they are enjoying in China, in spite of the need to get rid of Europe, which I applaud. I think they kicked out the English and the gringos and kicked rid all that system, and they rebuilt their own. So a lot of people are afraid that that's what's going to happen when we talk about Aslan. But I don't see us having the same circumstance as the Chinese. The best way I can say that we will get back this land is to outpopulate everybody. And it's more fun. Make love, not war.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to wind up
Okay.
today. And one of the things I want to talk about is how my students, over the last 11 years that I've been teaching Chicano art, I don't get to teach it every semester, but I work it in. If it's not a class, I work it into the other courses. And they respond to your Migulandia. They respond to icons that they know from their home experience, from their community experience. They respond viscerally, the spirit, the heart, the body, the whole thing, the body, mind, and spirit can respond to it. You put into visual language
what they know,
yeah, and authenticate it, and just make it legitimate.
That's what I wanted with those four, and it happened. Little did I ever know it was going to happen. That's what I wanted. But I wouldn't. If you would have asked me before those four, I would have never imagined.
So looking back on your experience, what has been that path as an artist?
I can't help but think of the years of toil and ridicule and people pretty much attacking me for what I thought was obvious and what was yet in their imagination. And that is that we have a cool culture, but you can't look at it through the gringo eyes, because you're going to see something that would be equivalent to self-hatred. That's the problem. And all these people that come from Mexico that want us to be Mexicans, and as long as they're here over 5 years, they become Chicanos as quickly as they can, but wrap themselves around a Mexican ideology that doesn't exist. It actually causes the friction that we have, the cultural friction. Chicanos culturally know how to swim with the gabacho. We know how to behave with them. The most cholo of us knows how to interact with the white prison guard. The thing is that most raza and the people that represent, Spanish-speaking cultures have to realize that we can't depend on other people's opinions. We have to do what I think the blacks did and create their own world. They did, jazz and everything. I can't really think of the United States without Coltrane and Satchmo and Nat King Cole, Ray Charles. I mean, I can't see the United States without James Brown or Stevie Wonder. And I won't forget all the females, Ella Fitzgerald, Anita Baker. I mean, I know those people like they were my ethnic group. So I spent a lifetime trying to validate our experience, because most Chicanos, man, if you had to vote, they'd probably be more black than a lot of things. And not everybody, but I think culturally I certainly am very, very, very black influenced by music and a number of things, and the politics. So we as Chicanos are no longer Mexicans. We've had the influence of a lot of other input, and we have to not only recognize it, but defend it. So Armando, the young man that I've been mentoring, Armando, who has been staying here, painter, I've tried to get him to understand that not only did he become Chicano, but he has to start getting rid of those fears of the migra. He comes with a lot of intrepidations of what he is over here as an illegal person. And I told him, you're not illegal. I said, forget that. I said, what's illegal about you? I said, if you keep thinking of yourself the way they do, you're lost. I said, me? I don't care if they don't like Mexicans. Ha ha, I'm a Chicano. It's a joke. So, and I really don't care. And I had this attitude when I was 20. And this is why, in many instances, and I almost want to apologize for being contentious and feisty with people that didn't understand that I was fighting the world in those days. I'm an older man now, and I'm less prone to fight anymore. I think it's just part of the world that I live in that makes it as crazy as it is. But I'm adamant about completing my lifelong work in validating ethnicity as a motive to make art. And I've said these things over and over again. I mean, for years. And encourage people to conference and get together, learn how to talk to each other. I mean, there's so many facets to this that has kept me very busy and made a very interesting life because of it. And you don't know how happy that makes me feel to know that these kids are responding to themselves, because what I'm doing is I'm painting a picture of them via or vis-a-vis the culture, or via-vis, as some people use.
I don't know what the French, how they say it.
Well,
I am.
you can't say paradigm.
No, I don't say paradigm. Was that your student? You told me that story.
No, Rudy told me that
Oh.
story. It was this girl he was talking about.
I'm fascinated by this, 40 years of productivity that you can see, I see it in my students. It's the validation. And you talked about now there's a grant that has the category of traditional art, and in that category is lowrider.
Specifically.
Right. What are the spaces where it's still a challenge?
Well, it's like the women's movement. It's not over. Women have increased their social status and standing 100-fold. I could tell you it's a lot, but it's never going to be enough for some women, for sure. And I can see it as a male that we still have a ways to go, because not everybody's on the same page, for one. And secondly, we still have that glass ceiling. It's still there. Even though we have Paris Hilton and some people, some females that are incredibly wealthy, but they don't do anything about it. It's kind of like a wasted slot, Can you imagine yourself with her money and what you could do for your department? So I say to the young students and everything that they have to connect with their ancestors and create for themselves a new mythology. And they have to make their own mark. I made mine. All I did was say, hey, look at this path. It's wonderful, it's great, it's colorful, it's funny, it's full of life and spirit. And this is what Gabachos like. This is what other ethnic groups, except for the blacks, they got their own, and they got their own things, but even they respond to it. And this is why we have salsa. This is why we have Mongo Santa Maria and Willie Bobo and all those guys that are wonderful. Even Ruben Blades, who see, culture among us is just, the color is meaningless. We understand it. There's people that are racist, but for the most part, mi negrita and mi morena, those are endearments to us. If you're not a racist, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'm not colorblind. I'm color ignorant. I don't see that as being a real criteria. It's stupid. The color of somebody's skin can tell you something about them, unfortunately, but not to the extent that it's going to give you any valuable information. Like, I know black people, they're so racist, and they're colorblind. I think that they only see black. That's what I mean by being colorblind, not the other way. The more popular is that you're ignorant of. But I see color blindness among Chicanos and white people too. They don't see anything except their own. I find that petty. So I'm after something more substantial. I think that our culture is gonna happen. I think in the long run we're gonna become something totally different. as Chicanos, Chicanas, but we're going to modify it.
Do you think then
They
you're-
can't be like me. I was born in 1940. They weren't even here until 1980. That's 80 years later.
So
I'm kidding.
what do you think your sources will change as the Chicano, like for example, we're out here in Ontario. Now there were probably Mexicano, Chicano, Indio people here, but
Yeah.
their
Before the gold
cultural,
rush.
right, their cultural influences, their cultural code, their material culture is nothing like the ones you're referencing.
No, not at all.
Well, except
Mine are-
for you do reference indigenous motifs and icons and narratives. So do you think as we become more middle class or more suburban,
Some of us, yeah.
some,
Not
do you think your
everybody.
images are gonna change?
No. I lived like an immigrant person that lives today. I've gone into the homes of friends that I go to their house, and the smells of the house, the pine sol and the whole thing. I remember my grandma cleaning all the linoleum floors from one end to the other with a strong scent of Purex or pine sol and all that. And I remember that I lived like that. And then I look at this, the context that I'm in, and the politeness, the social, the cordial ambience there was like when we were kids. But then as you go into a middle class house, they're more gabacho, colder. They won't even offer you a drink. The kids will walk into the room and never say anything and just go put on loud music and then ignore that you're even there. So we've adopted gringo culture as we become middle class. I don't do that here. Here, we are still Chicanos. Even my kids know that when they come in here, they're going to hear oldies. They're going to hear, and they love the music. By the way, I mean, my kids have been acculturated much more broadly than a lot of families. My son, Otoño, who has, he's part of a group called Los Pochos, they play Tex-Mex. And when they first played over in San Antonio, those guys over there, they were kind of like curious, like this California, they never get California groups in Tex-Mex. They're born in Texas. Right. Well, luckily my father was from Texas, so we have that weak link. But nonetheless, my son, after getting a Cal Arts BFA, actually went back and did Tex-Mex. He chose that music. That was a conscious, viable musical path for him. And so, what you're going back to, what you're kind of alluding to about young people and so forth, yeah, they're going to have a different experience, but they're also going to have to reach back to anchor themselves. Because if they're only going to depend on contemporary image and so forth, they're going into corporate worldviews. And they're going to be just like anybody in New York or Wisconsin or Lebanon. I mean, they're all going to be doing the same thing. And the richness of our culture, the value of our culture, is that we do have this unique combination of black, gringo, Japanese, whatever it is. And we're not alone. I had a Persian girl come to a Mento Menudo, and she was studying them because she felt that they needed that in their culture for the young kids that were acculturating into gringo culture while their Persian parents were still locked up into the ills of the Shah and so forth. I mean, each generation brings an experience that's decidedly different. That's the way the world is. But you go back to Constantinople, or you go back to some of these big centers where in the Greeks and so forth, the same excitement was taking place. There was this incredible mix of cultures where things really catapulted in knowledge and science. And how do you think Europe became so advanced? They were borrowing ideas from all over the world, putting them.
This is Karen Davalos with Gil Magu Lujan, and he was telling me about the mix of cultures and how that, in fact, the Europeans
borrowing, stealing, taking from other civilizations, what led to their own advancement. That creates the richness. I know you probably want to finish your thought, but I was hoping you could sum up with a little bit of a commentary about your creative process. In looking at the work that you have gathered in your home here, the pencil line becomes more painterly. It's not necessarily over time. It seems to depend upon the subject matter, like how you tackle the face. Well, it could be more cartoony, or it could, your brush stroke has that kind of impressionistic blending of color, whereas other times it's flat.
Well, I think that's normal to artists that are working. In my case, I'm thinking these things out, if not as loud as I'm saying now, or as conscious as I'm saying now, but I do consider the paint, the strokes and all that stuff, and they do dictate the mood and the results of the artwork. But at the same time, I think, like in the Asia, when you do 10,000 drawings, after a while, it's an automatic, spontaneous routine. It really is a routine. So these things that I'm doing, and I have the mind of always being a student, always like trying to figure it out. And I think it's a healthy place because I keep my insecurities up front. You know, I never want to assume or pretend that, man, I'm kicking ass here, you know, I'm really doing good. I don't operate that way. I work better from a kind of a real, not even an anxiety-free exploration. It's not anxious, but I purposely keep, and I'm very well aware of the wisdom of insecurities. I think Alan Watts wrote a book, something about that. And another guy wrote a book about how great small things are. And so, in being influenced by those thoughts, I also know that when I do my artwork, I'm trying to employ a lot of things. My criteria, and I told you this before, is very complex, more than people even think about. I think about gender issues. I think about being politically correct, although I don't believe in it. But still, I take it into consideration. I take into consideration my audience, my historical place 200 years from now. I think about any number of things that are things that life brings to you in your life, you know. All the knowledge that I've tried to accumulate after I got my MFA are all part of a continuing effort to be a better Chicano artist. That's all I think about. And people tell me, well, you're already a good artist. I say, well, not yet. Because if you stop striving and so forth, it's kind of an egotistical thing that's really foreign to my own needs. I don't think of myself that way. Every time somebody tells me that, and I do get this, do you know Magu? That's one of the things I get a lot. People, I'm all over the place, and people tell me, hey, you know, I was in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I was talking to this guy, and the subject of artists came up, and then he says, do you know Magu? I swear it's almost like that. Now that in itself is impressive to me, because for some reason, and I think I would point to the effectiveness of the work where people relate to it, where people can get some kind of visceral connection to it, is the ticket. So I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to be psychoanalyzed and so forth. I do enough of that on my own. But I'm very well aware as an artist that I'm the instrument and the thinking more than anything, and the ideas in my artwork. However I hide the skill and the complexity of what I do, It's a surreptitious kind of need to not be out front too much, not to be too much in people's face. The sensuality of the color and the seduction of what I'm trying to do is relying on those people going from what I'm doing. And lately I've been doing this, our family car, and the fellow who's doing the work is an upholstery master. I mean, he does great work. And so we're now doing the upholstery and making it a burrito and all that. So that's been a challenge for him because he's never done anything like that. And he tells me that his friends are all gabachos, they're all, non-Chicanos, except for one Chicanito. He's been coming back. He came 3 times to talk to me. And I was finally at the end, I talked to him. And the response I get from across the ethnic board is curiosity. They are baffled a little bit about flames on a lowrider. They are baffled by all these little corny little things that are going on. And there's something attractive about it, but still, it isn't what they're accustomed to. So guys are actually coming and taking pictures, telling their wives about it. Now you gotta tell, I'm telling you that you asked me what success was. That's evidence of success for me, that I connected with people and made people think that Chicano art is not all those negative opinions that they have, that something else can take place of those negative opinions. Something whimsical, something fun, humorous, and something that you would like to own. Because my sales are going up like crazy. And
Where are you selling?
well, I'm in 2 galleries right now. The Korean gallery is down at the brewery, and I have those things are not really going to be selling because the prices are much too high for the casual collector. Mm-hmm. And over here in Pomona, where I have a little show, most of the stuff that I have in there, I don't really want to sell. But I put this one not for sale there, and this guy still wants to buy it, which is sometimes psychologically, not for sale, I want it. Well, I told him the price, and then he came a response, and I'm talking to the owner of the gallery.
Yeah.
Then the guy's response was, well, hey, I'm from Pomona, meaning I can't afford a lot of money. And my usual response is that my artwork is not based on your paycheck. Simple as that, But I do have layaway. And so I told the gallery guy, I said, well, don't go below this price like that. And so this guy came back and he came with a price $250 less than what was my bottom line, right?
Right.
And so the owner says, well, he wants to talk to you. So this guy started in, he goes, well, it's just like buying a car. Well, I got $1,300 cash right now, and in my bank, or can say, what a big lie. I said, I don't care what he's got in his bank. I don't ever believe people anyway. And I said, okay. And then there was this long silence. It was like too easy. But I figured this. I don't want the thing back. I got enough artwork here. The guy was black. I could, by intonation, just by reading his voice. And I want to sell artwork now. And before, I wouldn't have sold it. I would have stuck to my guns, and because the thing was worth much more than $1,300. But these other thoughts come into my mind. He's a black guy. I've always enjoyed this and that. I have actually pro-black ideas, like pro-women ideas, especially if they're pretty and young. Anyway, I have these ideas and so forth that basically made me agree to it real quick. And this guy was happy. He was, and I told him, I said, you've got equity in this thing already. It's worth more than you paid for it. And he just giggled. And I said, oh, okay, so good. The point is that I have a lot of work, and I'm going to start selling it and so forth. But if I get the sense, now this guy was gaming me, but I know I have a lot of friends, and car guys and so forth, and they always tell, well, I only have this much money, and I usually tell them, well, it's not enough. And I used to play really hard nosed because I never liked selling. Now I just find that I just let it go, you know. But it doesn't happen that often either. Like, it depends on the situation. At that time, that mood, that's what I chose to do.
Were you holding on to stuff because of your Zen understanding of your place in the world and not letting the ego rule, or was it an attachment to the object, the experience of making
I
it?
still don't understand why, when I just finished telling you, I don't like to sell, and people look for reasons. They tell me, people try to find all kinds of reasons why they can accept. It's true. Carlos used to tell me, oh, you don't want to let go of your work. Okay, I say, nah, that's not it. You don't want anybody to make money off your work. I mean, he would go through extreme. I said, I do not like to sell. How do you want to, yo no me gusta vender las ondas. ¿Qué pasó? No entiendes. But
You got me.
I think people have, I don't have commercial interests. And I want to make money now, but I can't lust for it. I can't. It's just not there. If I never sold anything the rest of my life, I could care less. And some people depend their lives on it. They say, God, you don't sell work, you're useless. Because I know that you can sell a bucket of shit. Somebody will come by and they'll kiss your butt for that bucket of crap. People will buy it. People will buy clowns. They'll buy little mierditas. They buy Kincaid, for God. They made him a multi-million-dollar guy, and all he does is process the same little, cositas. So selling work is hardly a criteria of success. But what you told me about those students, and when I hear people really, like these gabachitos that just, they tell him, they're not talking to me, they don't even know who I am. And they like it, they respond, there's something's happening to them, and they make a point out of coming back and taking pictures and telling their wives. Now that's success.
That's a good story to end on. Thank you.
Sure, yeah.